Centipede.
I did say centipede. Sometimes I tend to say the human caterpillar a lot, which then makes you think of the very hungry human caterpillar or something. So
Of course. And
yeah.
stuff.
Well, I mean that's kind of a moopsy thing if you've got caught that already.
Yeah, no, I did. I get to host Trek of the Week, I think we're calling it now.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, Heather's going to be away, so I get to talk about those two episodes.
I kind of did the flip side of the coin, I guess, Sunday night where we did the early version of it.
Yeah, so that's the international hour,
Yeah,
the time that's
yeah,
set up for international. Okay, cool.
yeah. That once it's going pretty good. It's usually, I think it's 4 to 8. So only one week did I have to resort to like start raising your hand. So, but
Oh, good.
but
Yeah, that's about Orville size, about 4 to 8 people.
I was thinking of renaming it the Insomniacs Hour though, because I think half the people are phoning in from the States.
Oh yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
Dom and Brian will show up and it's like 3 in the morning for them, and
Uh-huh.
Jane comes in, it's like 6. Well, she's waking up early in her case, but yeah.
Right.
Because I thought about tweaking the time a little bit, but the regulars like, no, I don't like earlier or later. So I was like, I'll keep it there. And if Americans want to show up at weird times, they can. So
Yeah,
I
heck
I,
yeah.
I certainly wouldn't get on a 3 a.m. podcast, but or a Discord session, but yeah.
That's yeah, that's if it works for them, it works.
That's right. That's right. Let me give it a quick silence and then I'll start the podcast, I suppose. Hello, welcome to podcast 1999. This is Matt here. Say hello, Mark. Up,
Hello,
there is
Mark.
no Mark. Hello, Mark, who's probably listening at some point, but he had to tap out. He had a wee bout of it, but the docs brought him through.
He had a
Dragon
wee bout.
Dragon Con. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah. But yes, we'll be well wishers and wish him well. So he said our guest today from Mission Log to Orville, Captain Mike Richards. He said he trusts you to just be the co-host in this one and not the guest. So
Well, I hope the doc does pull you through. And sorry about Dragon Con. Would have loved to go to that. Have not been to anything nearly that epic. Although STLV isn't bad.
yeah, that seems pretty big. And having not been to him, I'm an Atlanta native and I've never been to Dragon Con. Of course, I've
Oh
been in
wow.
Japan since 2010, so that's an awful lot of Dragon Cons I wouldn't have gone to. So, and I spent the 2000s, well, some of that in Japan, some of it like running around in Maine and Canada and chasing whales. So,
Oh no way.
no real regrets there. Chasing whales to see them, not to harpoon them. But we did joke
Right.
if the school, it was a environmental education thing. So we joke like if we ever did need money, we could mount a harpoon on the front of the schooner. So yeah.
That's
But
awesome.
today we're looking at the episode Ring Around the Moon. Mike, where's your fandom on this one? Because Mark and I are more like curious and kind of getting into it. Like I've seen some before, but part of the conceit of this podcast is we are not hardcore fans. Some of our guests are. Where do
So
you want to rate yourself? Are you just
man,
like dipping a toe or?
I don't know. Little background. I watched Breakaway when it premiered in the States with my older brother, and I think that was about 1975. So I was 8-ish, 7 or 8. With my brother, upstairs on the crappy TV because my parents wouldn't let us watch anything good on the family TV. So we're kind of huddled around this thing. So I have been a Space 1999 fan for the better part of 50 years. I don't remember ever seeing this episode before. I watched this, and as soon as I was going to say Ted Cassidy, but Ted Clifford came in, I was like, I don't remember this. So I fell asleep the first time I watched it. Got through it the second time, and the third time it was not to answer your question, I guess. Not my favorite. I would say it probably falls maybe towards the top end of the bottom third.
Yeah, I was looking at Weekend. I had already written my trivia or whatever, but it was saying that this is a very divisive episode with
Mhm.
saying some people consider it the worst of season one, and then other people are like, this is the apex of science fiction. I guess I'm going to come from the more positive side just because it's really trippy and that appeals to me, having a guy with a tripometer on a different podcast. So um, I do like
Man,
that.
you got a brainy, one-eyed planet. So that's right there. That's got some style points.
Literally brainy. If you're a listener who has not recently watched this or doesn't remember, it's a brain eye planet, which is pretty. I don't know. I thought that was cool.
Same.
Well, before I get too deep into it, let me do said trivia. The original air date for this one was January 15th, 1976. So your 75 date checks out for Breakaway. The episode was directed by Ray Austin. Before his directing credits, he made a name as a stuntman in North by Northwest and Spartacus, and served as a stunt coordinator on The Avengers, the one with John Steed and such. He'd start directing on that show as well, and would later direct 50 episodes of the Family Channel's Zorro, somewhere around 1990. I think that show was running. I think it said 1988 to 91 or
Right.
something. I didn't write the dates down. Oops. The script was by Edward D. Lorenzo. He'll write a few more Space 1999s, and he also contributed scripts to The Wild Wild West and Miami Vice, which is a pretty weird duo of shows to have credits on, but good for him. Max Faulkner was our doomed Clifford, Ted. His main claim to fame was appearing in multiple Doctor Who serials in the 1970s. I thought I was going to write down like an awesome list of genre films. I was like, oh, these are all Doctor Who serials. Okay, so if you know, look up a list of 70s Doctor Who serials. They have fantastic names. This episode has an original score by Vic Helms, Sylvia Anderson's son-in-law. Sylvia Anderson, of course, being one of the Andersons that make the show. I didn't write that down. Why am I saying this? Okay. He assumed he could just hum his ideas to the musicians or something on the day of the session, and that would work out. It did not work out, and music editor Alan Willis saved the day by transcribing Helms's ideas and conducting the musicians. While the music was originally supposed to resemble Rosbell, there's a weird amount of prog rock vibes lingering around. So hey, Mike, do you have my notes on hand by chance?
I do.
I guess I'll just save my voice. If you don't mind, can I toss you that summary?
Yeah, not a problem at all. I know I have them. Let me just alt
Okay,
tab until I can get them.
no
Edit.
problem. Sorry, my first line has the word cray cray, so I hope you can handle that. But
There we
yeah,
go. Yeah, sure do. Technic. Do I start it with recap, prologue, act one, anything like that?
nah, you can just blast off.
Nah. Ted blast off, yeah. Technician Ted Clifford suddenly goes cray-cray, goes wild on Moonbase Alpha's computer, and tries to strangle Commander Koenig. Then Ted dies, and a glowing orange orb with an eyeball brain envelops the moon. They are the Tritons. They melted Ted's brain and now claim the moon as their captive. Koenig sends his main man pilot John Carter, Alan Carter.
Oh
Alan
yeah,
Carter?
sorry. John
It's
Carter's the
okay.
guy on Mars. Yeah, hey, it's 1 a.m.
Koenig sends his main man Alan Carter and a doomed man named Donovan to check out the phenomena. The orb's force field sends their eagle careening back to the moon, and Donovan dies. In the recovery mission, Dr. Helena Russell is snatched away by the aliens, who have transporter technology, put her into an evening gown to have a chat, and send her back to Moonbase Alpha. Of course, now she can be activated by the Tritons to transport around, send classified information, and so forth. They've honed their mind control techniques, and it'll take a few days to melt her brain. Commander Koenig does not want that brain to be melted, so he takes off in an eagle to confront Triton. He's armed with the knowledge that planet Triton has been destroyed, so the probe no longer needs to function. Nice. It takes 2 tries, but he gets his moment to chat with the Triton probe and talk it into destroying itself Captain Kirk style. The Eagle team makes it back, and Dr. Russell has beautiful optic. The Eagle team makes it back, and Dr. Russell has beautiful optic nerves.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, it sounds interesting when someone else reads it. So I, I just done a podcast on Plan 9 from Outer Space, and I said, like if I wrote dialogue, it would sound like Ed Wood's dialogue, probably, like,
Right.
because that's just not my writing forte. And having you read it, especially at the middle, I kind of felt the Ed Wood of my own writing coming through.
That's all right. First time through, so without practice, it read very well and was easy to easy to follow. Unlike some of my run-on sentences with, but God love the semicolon. You can just run on forever.
Yeah, yeah, it's like that Lonely Island song, except they get it wrong, don't they? um, you said I actually did not see your notes, but you said we had similar takes on some of this. Where did you? I'm curious where you saw the commonalities.
Oh, the commonalities was with the brainy one-eyed space planet. The talking. I wrote this is a lot like Kirk talking a computer to death, and you put this is kind of like Kirk talking a computer to death in your notes.
And in the summary.
So yeah. So I saw those two things together. The lovely optic nerve, I was like, my comment was, so her optic nerve is lovely and her middle ear is perfect. Dr. Bob. Come on, are you flirting with Dr. Russell?
What a sweetie. Okay. We see that happening. Before I guess we get too deep into the weeds, I think this has one of my 10 favorite seconds of film of anything ever, which is the moonwalk disco. I was like, oh my god, that's the best thing. That
Oh
10
yeah.
seconds. There's like no reason for them to suddenly go to disco on the soundtrack. I'm like, oh, I love that. That's that. I want that.
It,
I want to live in that. I want that to be my world.
except it was 1976 and you had to. I thought it was funny because if I remember right, the sequence, the low gravity lunar gravity sequence in Breakaway was lauded for just being groundbreaking special effects. And I don't think they wanted to spend the money to replicate that in this episode, because they all just kind of like shuffled when they when they went out onto the lunar surface. There were no big jumps. There was no kind of slow-mo like in Breakaway. It was just sort of like, we're going to shuffle and that'll simulate Earth gravity good enough for, episode 19.
Yeah, yeah, probably, or four in our order. Actually, this is like The Prisoner, another show where the orders you're just like wild to the winds. So,
You know, it's funny because I've noticed that too, and I'm watching on Peacock TV, and the tile, the little picture that describes the episode, was from Earthbound. So it had Simmons in the plastic box with the platform shoes.
oops.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. So I was like, that's not this one. I know that one.
Yeah. So, yeah, having been doing the rewatch so far, I do feel like I have the A&E set from 15 years ago, and I believe it's production order. This one's number 4, and we have been finding that it makes a little more sense in production order because we meet Dr. Russell's ex-husband in episode 2 now, while we're still in like Earth orbit. Black Sun
Gotcha.
blasts us into another galaxy in episode 3, so now we're starting to encounter totally bizarre stuff in this episode.
Which was interesting because they were like, what do we know about planet Triton? And Victor was like, well, I don't know anything, but let me check the computer. Why would the computer know anything if this is a planet that's literally a black sun away from where they were, outside the solar system, outside anything that's been explored? So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's
And
not like they didn't have like a continuity person. They had different people running the episodes, so it's never really going to completely fit. I mean, again, there would be people suggesting the broadcast order would probably be the way to watch it as well.
mhm.
So, and as I've been inviting guests, most of them are kind of, I think, looking at the broadcast order. So,
I, I
whatever.
really I really like, when it comes to Star Trek the original series, production order, because you can see things evolve, you can see things develop,
Yeah,
you
you
can
don't want to
see
start with a
things.
man trap.
Right. You want to start with the Corbomite maneuver.
Right, right. So, or the pilot, even, or the two pilots. I
Right.
mean,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
that's the way to go about it. And you see
Right.
the evolution of it kind of becoming the standard
Mhm.
show from a few weird production hiccups.
Yeah, but exactly right. Following the pilots, then
Space
you get into.
1999 seemed to pretty much have their production down in the first episode. That excuse me. I guess that's part of like the Andersons vibe. Like, get all the design, make everything look standard, and then let it rip.
Oh, it looked beautiful. I'm working my way through Doctor Who right now, and I'm on season 15, which is I think the third or I could do some quick math, but I don't want to do that in public. Third or fourth season of the fourth Doctor. So it was 335. I'll say the fourth season of the fourth Doctor. And I just watched a serial called The Invisible Enemy, which took place on planet Triton, Titan, not
Mm.
Triton. And the in the trivia, the planetscape for Titan was reused Moonscape from Space 1999. Now this is after Space 1999 had its second series, aka second season. And I mean, the visuals in Space 1999 were so far and away ahead of, anything Doctor Who was doing a couple of years later. Literal spaceships, dangling from a string kind of thing, where I mean the shots of the Eagle and just Moonbase Alpha itself were just gorgeous. Always
Yeah,
have
I
been
mean,
from
the
the
worst
beginning.
you can say for the effects now are like, wow, it looks like the 70s. But hey, that's a plus. So no problem.
It
Like,
it kind definitely is, I'd say.
I mean, you're talking about cost cutting. So once we get inside the probe, it's what? It's complete blackness except for a couple of trippy lights and weird projections of scenes on Moonbase Alpha. And I was like,
Definitely
okay,
get
yeah, we get these segments. It's like, hey, it's like watching an avant-garde movie for a minute or two, which I love that sort of thing. I have DVDs and DVDs of avant-garde film collections. So yeah,
I was seriously getting like an empath vibe at that point where they were just like no budget, just a black room, no background, and just the characters.
which is one of the only TOS episodes I've never seen. I think that and Catspaw.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So you gotta save
But
something, right? That you can say, oh, and here's a new one. I think I've probably seen half of the empaths, to be honest. I think it might be I don't like the empaths, but
I I yeah, it's one of those one like back in the days of like, hey, is it a good one? Yeah, maybe I'll flip over to something else.
and I will back some of those season 3 episodes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they just there was just a list on whatever it was like the 57 greatest episodes, and the list it's a weird wacky list that doesn't make sense. But they put This Way to Eden as number 57. It's like, okay, I appreciate that move at least. You're putting it on the
Yeah.
top 57
Yeah.
Trek episodes ever. I like that.
There
They
was
reach.
they reach, baby. Yeah, when you get a guy playing a bicycle wheel and you get Spock playing his Vulcan lute, it was just a jam session.
There are
Guy
things to
from
love.
uh guy from Rambo just kind of in a loincloth kind of thing.
Yeah. Uh, Mark has referred to while liking the episode generally, he has referred to a
Uh,
few of the plots as stupid, like the science behind it, right? I think this one, well, the eye brain you could call like cool stupid, I guess, but
yeah.
otherwise, I think this one does kind of check out. I mean, it for me, it seemed like kind of a weird, even more than the TOS episode in Star Trek that what was the one that sort of became the motion picture.
The Changeling.
Yes, thank you. All I could think was the Sentinel. I knew that was wrong. But yeah, I feel like this is more like a dry run for the motion picture than that was.
Yeah, it was interesting. I liked the fact that, they were assuming this was or calling this planet Triton. But obviously it was like a brain and an eye, which is like the ultimate. Like if I was going to bring the ultimate sensor, like the ultimate computer sensor device, like what do you need, right? You need a brain to process the information. You need an eye to be like a sensor for it, right? So
In
the
space.
Tritons, yeah, in space. So you send this thing out to be your, eyes and be a sensor for you. Like that's kind of the perfect thing. And I do like that was what they thought was a planet. It was actually more of just a device that they
But
that they figured out.
other V'ger things. Dr. Russell basically becomes the probe, the
Yeah, the
human
Ilea
probe,
probe.
the
Hmm.
Ilea probe. So that's going on. Trying to send classified information from the computer that using that, right? So because they have
Yeah,
the lightning is trying to steal all of the
defense
enterprises.
plans,
Yeah,
fleet
yeah. So
information, all of
here
that.
here they're like I especially Barbara Bain on the keypad, I thought was like really funny. She was just like tickling down and then going back up like a like clearly she's not typing in anything.
Oh, and it's so funny because with her and with Ted Clifford, God rest his soul, um, whenever I see film that appears to be sped up, man, it takes me out of the production. Like it just does. Knight Rider did that a little bit. Airwolf did that.
Benny Hill.
But at least that was scored properly.
Yeah, okay,
But
that's a good point.
and even Next Gen did that with Data working his magic on the L cars from time to time. I just, I think you can just go with like fast human typing, and that's for a hunt and pecker like me, that's impressive enough.
I was just having a podcast re-listen of the original Star Wars, so um, listening to people watch the film without watching the film again. But hey, it's kind of actually I've been doing a lot of that recently because it's kind of a fun mental exercise to try and just replay the entire movie in your brain while listening to people talk about it. So,
Right.
um, so I actually kind of like it. I'm walking out in a rice field. It's a nice sunny day, and I'm like mentally playing Star Wars in my head as an exercise. So it's cool. Anyway, the point was one of the things Harrison Ford really does maybe the best for sci-fi is when he's piloting the Millennium Falcon, he looks like he knows what he's doing. If you asked Harrison Ford, oh, I'm just pressing damn buttons, you know. But maybe because he was a carpenter and worked with his hands a lot, and he has giant hands, he just on the Falcon, he always looked like he knew what he was doing, which is very
See,
different than the actors in here.
I could swear I heard a little bit of a different take on that at one point, where he got in, he sat down, he asked, "How do you fly this thing?" And George Lucas or whoever was on site said, "What do you mean, how do you fly it? You just fly it." And he goes, "No, I need to know like how you operate this thing so it looks realistic." So I think there was like, and again, I could be imagining this, but I do think I did hear Harrison Ford deliberately wanted to know what he was to do, like with the buttons and switches and knobs and even levers.
You're probably right. This was a comedy bit, assuming what he would say if you asked him today. So, in 1977, what you're saying, I'm going to actually say you probably have the more accurate story there. And hey, he's a pilot now. He keeps crashing his planes, but yeah, he would know a bit about that as well. So, I mean,
He
how many
would.
how many Cessnas has he taken down? It's been like
I don't know. I
three.
know the one. I know there was the one on the golf course, and apparently he was guilty of. And this came from the NTSB report. I heard secondhand, so I'm going to share it anyway because what the hell? It makes good gossip. Was that he was basically like, "Hey kid, I'm going to take my airplane up for a ride, get it fueled up, and get it ready for me." And then he just went out and flew it, and did not realize that it was not fueled and not
Oh,
really pre-flighted properly.
so you assume the kid
So
would listen, and the kid did not listen. Okay.
you would think the kid would, yeah, do what they had one job,
Andy
right?
Jones tells you if
Get the airplane
pull up
ready.
the plane, you do it because you might have the Peruvian natives chasing you, and a snake in the plane. One snake, not
God damn
snakes.
it, short round. You had one job.
Actually,
Um,
I just watched that last week because my daughter suddenly decided she really wanted to watch Indiana Jones, and it still holds up, still a good movie.
that,
I had to leave halfway through to go to orchestra practice, and I was like regretting it. So
that's kind of funny. I have not seen I've watched what we all know as Raiders of the Lost Ark, or Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. I've seen that many times. I've seen The Last Crusade many times. I've seen Crystal Skull twice, and I've seen the new one once, but Dial of Destiny. But Temple of Doom, I know I saw in the movie theater. I think I may have seen it one other time, but I'm hearing such good things about it lately that I need to go back and rewatch that and kind of have that on my list right now.
that
Um,
that's I just want to plug in. I did watch that because when my daughter's interested, we got the Blu-ray set of the first four,
mhm.
but watching it, and this is gonna dovetail into Space 1999 a little bit, but watching it, I don't know how many times I've seen Temple of Doom because when that came out, I was maybe 5 years old, and I had the comic book, like the So I
Yeah.
read that a lot, and I'm like, well, how many times do I remember seeing this movie? But I actually just read the comic book, because I do remember reading that quite a bit. And my dovetail was going to be the novelization of this particular episode, which is pretty whack. It's the '70s;
Oh,
you can change everything, right?
yeah.
So,
I was going to bring up one more similarity with the motion picture. And remember how touchy James T. Kirk was in the motion picture? He was sort of like very controlling and not giving people a chance to do their jobs. Well, you got Koenig, who's all like, "I need an autopsy." Ellen is like, "I don't know if I can do that. That might not be possible." And he goes, "Make it possible." And then you got Alan Carter, who's like, "This is a bad move, man. They already killed Ted Clifford. I don't want, I
Donovan's
don't
gonna
want to
die.
I don't want to be next. This is the wrong move." And he's like, "That's an order, you know, Mr. Pilot. Are you going to
Yeah,
do it or not?"
see, that
So,
that's one of those things where I feel like it make a little more sense in the early run of the show, right? Because he's like still maybe flipping out a little bit that they've just been launched across the galaxy. So
really, really good point. And yeah, still kind of building that relationship, building trust both ways on that. But towards the end, where Koenig said something along the lines of, "If I'm not back in 15 minutes, blast off out of here without me." I'm thinking at that point, Alan might have given him about 10
0.
minutes.
Here we go. This is I found the novelization. So I'm just going to read this straight from Wiki.
Oh,
That
yeah.
writer E.C. Tubb took many liberties with the details of this teleplay. It was published in '75, so before the episode aired. The probe's home of Triton was no longer a planet 2 million light years from Earth, but the moon of Neptune, which in this narrative had gone missing some few years before 1999. The Bergman creates the anti-gravity shield specifically for the purpose of penetrating the Triton ship's force field, having gained the knowledge required to perfect the technique from the atomic waste explosion earlier in the novel. So this is actually in the breakaway novel. Okay. Having been convinced of the demise of its home, the probe chooses to self-destruct, though not before warning the Alphans of their impending encounter with the Black Sun. So I guess this is like immediately after breakaway because it's in that novel now. So
Right.
kind of interesting. I think I prefer the way the TV show does it and just have it be in weird deep space. But I want to be in weird deep space, you know?
Yeah, I think weird deep space is the way to go, because I mean, I think sort of the in-universe explanation is that they keep hitting maybe wormholes and time warps and other things that just they just sort of meander around time and space and cover great distances in this on
Moon.
this moon. Yeah, moon.
Like it's a little more Trek talk, but it's making me think. I remember when Next Gen first started airing, and people weren't really warm on it on season 1 or 2, right? It took a while
Right.
to take.
Yeah.
And I
They had
remember
to
one
get
of his
collars.
yeah, I remember one of his not complaints at the time, but gripes. We'll call it a gripe. Hey man, I got a gripe. Is like he was like the original show, the Enterprise is just already out in like deep space, right? Just by the
Hmm.
camera. And he didn't like in Next Gen that you would see the Enterprise go by like Jupiter and Saturn first. Because he's like, well, that feels like every episode starts from Earth, and he didn't like that.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I guess Space 1999 also shows you Earth in the first shot of the titles, but quickly blasts out the moon. But that's part of the basic story, right? I mean, part of the Enterprise isn't it left Earth, whereas with the moon, that is a major story point.
Yeah, it really is. And they kind of give you the background information with the, introductory verbiage at the beginning of the episode, kind of as to why they're out there and what they're doing. Would like a little more thanks to Alan Carter. Only all but 4 of our Eagles are damaged. Thanks, Alan. Thank you. We could really use some of those now.
I wanted an eagle count. We've already been talking about this. Like, eagles blow up every episode, and they're on a moon base. Can they prefabricate? I think Mark had the idea that'd be fun if over the course of the show, like moon base Alpha becomes like smaller and smaller because they keep reappropriating parts of it to make more eagles.
They could be doing that, and I wonder like what maybe they could mine for I don't know. I've never seen any kind of mining operation on Moonbase Alpha, but if there are minerals, iron, steel, that could be used to make eagles in mind, possibly.
So it's not as
Um,
bad as the Voyager situation where it's like, seriously, people, you're out of shuttlecraft now. We've seen like 12 go. It's not a big ship. That's
and that's why
12.
I think it's so awesome that in Prodigy that they had the shuttle fabricator installed in the protostar so that they could just make new shuttles whenever they need one.
The problem is that Voyager eventually makes a big deal out of it when they do build a new shuttle, but by that point they should have already lost all of their shuttles.
Oh yeah.
But
No no
so I'm willing to give Moonbase a ton of slack because at least they should have fabrication shops, like, dedicated ones to building Eagles anyway.
it definitely does look like wherever is below the level that the eagles come up, right? So the eagles come up. There's a great shot today of an eagle coming up from under Moonbase Alpha, and the moon buggy was there. It looked great. It looked phenomenal. But whatever's down there, it looks like it's a big hangar with maintenance and people working. And I would say more, if not the ability to repair, definitely the ability to repair an eagle. But I think they could fabricate easily an eagle down there.
Yeah, because they are like 300 people on Moonbase Alpha. You could have a good 30-person team doing that
Right.
without pulling your labor thin. I guess we're down to 298 now,
Mhm.
but I don't remember if 300 is the number or not, but whatever.
I
Something like
loved
that.
I loved this line. He says to Kano, "Try every possible variable in the computer." And Kano replies, "Yes, sir." My response might have been, "That might take some time to try
Because
every
to
possible
infinity and
variable."
beyond.
And what about John's headshot on his comlock? Like, does everybody have a headshot on their comlock? Have they ever focused in on that in another episode?
I don't know. I'll throw out the design element that really stuck out to me in this episode, and I guess I've probably seen it in several episodes, but in this one it just leaped out at me is the monochrome globe in Koenig's office. Yeah, you're
I
pointing at your
have that
microphone.
same note. I have that same note. Why the giant globe of Earth, and why haven't I ever noticed it before? So, again, I'm not an astronomer, not a astrophysicist, but the way I understand it is the moon is in a locked orbit with Earth, meaning that the same side of the moon always faces Earth, right? And it's already been established that they're not on the dark side of the moon, because that's where
Pink Floyd
waste
lives.
disposal. Yeah, that's where waste disposal areas A and B were. Um, so they can look up and see while they were in orbit before breakaway. They could look up and see Earth anytime they wanted. Yet they have got this giant monochromatic globe of the Earth in Koenig's office. I didn't get. Then again, I got
Some
a
people
globe
have
sitting
moon
behind me on
globes.
my desk.
Some people have moon globes. Well, yeah, you got an Earth globe there, so you can't see the Earth. Well, you can see the Earth when you look out the window, but not like that.
Not like that.
Yeah, but no, he probably bought it because it was cool.
It
So
was cool as hell. I want one now.
they sell those in the
Where
Moonbase Alpha gift shop. Oh, by the way, 311 personnel. By this time, I'm willing to say my 300 guess is probably correct because we've already seen a few people bite it. So
we've seen a few people bite it, and then we had the one where it always stands out in my mind is there's an episode where a bunch of people bite it, but then they kind of hit the reset button at the end of that, and everybody's okay. I don't know if you covered that one or not.
maybe it's War Games or something, which is still in the
Yeah.
future for us. Yeah. Again, though, I think it's earlier in the broadcast order, much later in the production order, sort of thing. Because they made the show like 2 years before it actually went on television. I think filming was 73.
Oh
So
no way, man! That's amazing. It was so revolutionary for that. What'd you think of Commander Koenig getting through his entire pre-flight and then looking over and saying, "All right, Parks, you ready to go?" Wait, you're not Parks.
well, I mean, free flights better than I do, but you could get engrossed in one, I guess.
I guess. I mean, okay, so knowing how touchy Commander Koenig was in this episode, I could see him being the guy that just comes in, sees a uh an unimportant human in the right seat, goes about their business, and doesn't even acknowledge the fact that it's not the human that he thought it was until until
It's the guy
right
he knows
before they
really well.
depart.
Or
It's the
maybe
guy
he's just
he
used
knows
to
really well.
seeing him.
And I was wondering, like, why would you want Parks when you can have Alan freaking Carter? But when and that scene when they were trying to cut the engines really hard, maybe Parks has slightly longer arms and would have been able to cut the engines a little bit sooner. Maybe Parks was the right guy for the job.
Oh yes, yes. Boo to the G-force effects, by the way.
I think they were trying to recapture some of the magic of Breakaway with the G forces that they were all pinned
Failure.
down to.
Failed. They failed.
They
That
did.
was not good G-force effects at
And I
all.
also loved when Koenig did finally push the cut engines button, that the shuttle just I'm sorry, the Eagle just kind of appeared to stop. And I'm like, that's not how that works in space. You'll stop accelerating. You won't stop moving.
And they just taught you about geometry so well when you see the beam from the eye reflecting off of the shields. That
Yeah,
was a
that's because
cool shot.
the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflex
I
something.
got
It's been a while.
C's in trigonometry. Um, so I learned more about it from this episode probably than I remember from high school. That
Yeah,
one shot. Now the shot of Dr. Russell at the airlock, that was fantastic. That was like nice. She had like the creepiest little smile on her face.
that was really really well done. She just shows up out of nowhere in her spacesuit, right? In her EV
Right.
suit. Yeah. And just
Because they
kind
make
of a
the
creepy
point that,
smile.
oh, she was like, oh, I wasn't in my spacesuit when I was in the probe, so it must
That's
have
right.
oxygen, which even with that, bit of a leap of faith just to pop open the airlock.
Okay. Okay. Exactly. Yes, because here they are. They don't really know where she went or what happened to her. She's saying, I remember being in an evening gown, not in my spacesuit, talking to this Tritonian, like that name, Tritonian. But how much of that could have been in their mind versus reality? And are you willing to forego the spacesuits as John Koenig did with him? And what were there, 4 purple sleeves with him? And he was like, no, you won't need that.
I mean, the Prometheus people, they took their helmets off way too early, but they did a little bit more checking at least than this.
Lots of people, I'm thinking of Shadow Realms on season 3 of the Orville, where they went over to the um you know weird creepy space station with no EV suits, but that worked out fine, so there's nothing to see there if you guys
Yeah.
want to check
Just
out
don't touch
that
the
episode.
walls. Don't touch the walls. Don't touch. Yeah.
No touchy.
I mean, I teach kids sometimes like just don't touch the kid next to you. What's so hard about that? I don't know.
So did you notice Koenig when he was in the Triton realm, the Triton
Zone.
zone, and it's all dark, and there's just that projection of Helena, I guess on the wall or just being projected somewhere, and John goes over it and tries to like hug it and touch it. That gave me just serious young Frankenstein vibes on that, when he's like walking around trying to snatch at the music.
He's right there. Well, like I said, the might be part of the charm of the show is the dynamic between them is so weird because the actors are married, the
Right.
characters have a professional scientific distance, but that breaks down as the show continues. So
And eventually the Alphins are going to have to, Alphin.
yeah,
And there's, only so many suitable as Tom Paris tried to
298 at
explain to
this
Harry
one.
Kim. Yeah, there's only so many suitable candidates out there.
Only so
Um
many Delaney sisters. Yeah.
exactly right, Delanians. And oh, what a treat. What a treat. Not to jump the timeline, but what a treat in season 2. When we finally get to see some more out of those two.
Yeah. Well, I guess I have this is my season 1 question that I ask at the end of each episode, and I feel
Okay.
like I'm gonna have to change it for season 2. I still have what 20 episodes to think about it, but at this point of the show, we're kind of breaking down like what percentage you can use, 100% if you want. How much of this is sci-fi fun, and how much of it is existential dread?
Boy, this one, I actually think this one has probably a higher percentage of existential dread. Um, in fact, I kind of think this whole episode was probably existential dread. And I liked that about this episode. Kind of the big ideas I have written down in my notes are not being aware of your own demise, right? The Tritons or the Triton computer, the Triton probe thought they were still a big kind of force to be reckoned with. The spokesman, if you will, the censor of this powerful civilization. So overcome with hubris that they didn't accurately assess the fact that they're no longer what they thought they were, that their planet had been destroyed, that they are out there, just a remote control droid or a drone out there, just operating on autopilot, going out and sensing things, and didn't even know that their civilization had been completely decimated. So I thought that was a really kind of powerful realization for the Triton, one-eyed brain planet to come across. And I guess it was more than it could handle, right? Because that was kind of what why it blew itself up real good.
Yeah, because V'ger actually achieves its purpose and becomes one
Yeah,
with the creator. So V'ger gets a
right.
happy ending in the end. Where yeah, this is kind of like a well, this is the Landru ending, right? If we're keeping Star Trek
Yeah.
things, where you just make it
Uh-huh.
explode because it can't handle the truth, you know.
Yeah, yeah, it sure can. And then I liked the question at the end where Victor was just sort of ruminating on, man, all that knowledge, what what became of all that knowledge? Um and Martin Martin Koenig, Martin Landau playing TV's John Koenig said perhaps knowledge isn't the answer, then what is? And I thought, what is the answer? Is it relationships? Is it progress? Is it the struggle? Is it finding a home? What is the answer? I think for the Alphans, it's probably finding a home is as good an answer as any.
Yeah, yeah. And I know they're. I mean, they keep threatening to do not project, but Operation Exodus, like every other episode, because they really want to. It's like Shaxx wanting to blow up the warp core in lower decks. But although it makes more sense to find a planet to live on. So, and the little short they aired on September 13th, 1999, at the convention, the little code of the series has the final
Right.
step of that operation, being
That's the one with
finished.
Sandra given the sign off, right?
Right, right. So they do in the end because that I think that's their main goal, right? So,
Yeah.
um, you know, uh, keeping up with the Trek references, they're going to be the 37s, except they'll be the 99ers. You know,
Yeah, they'll be the 99ers. Um, and another little Trek theme when Koenig at the end said, perhaps knowledge isn't the answer, then what is? I all I could think of was what of Lazarus? What of Lazarus?
I do love that episode, by the way. The alternative factor is one of
Hey,
my when I was 4 years old, that was my favorite TOS episode
that
because it has trippy lights,
it is got
swinging
trippy lights, got
cameras.
that scene where they do the negative. It's very subtle differences between the two Lazari
Yeah.
as they kind of bounce back and forth. That's that you're not the only person to tell me that that's their favorite episode.
Oh, it's not now, but it was when I was 4. but I
when
still
when
have
you're four.
I still have a certain joy for that one because it's so whack, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, actually, my existential dread meter, I'm going to top it out at 70% and 30% sci-fi fun for this one, actually.
I really think you nailed it. Yeah. I was gonna go, I don't know if I ever gave a number. Well, I think I said almost all, but I was gonna say 60 to 70%. I was right in that range. So
Well, I think Black Sun, I think we notched up to 95%. So,
mhm.
this is not like you were saying, wow, yeah, it's pretty dready. And it is, but doing the rewatch now, it's like, well, it's got a little more sci-fi fun. It's got trippy lights. It's got the whack effects. It's got the moon disco. So
Yeah. It
I was like 30% sci-fi fun for this one. Black Sun has plenty of trippiness too, but even the trippiness is like kind of like, you know, as the computer is telling you 0% possibility of survival, which it turns out to be wrong about, kind of, I guess. I don't know. They get
yeah.
old and philosophical first. But yeah.
And
And
I have to wonder if they, as soon as they decided not to um go with Operation Exodus in Breakaway, or kind of at the end of Breakaway when they were talking about it. That was kind of their last best shot, right? Like if they didn't think they could make it now, or the computer didn't think it would make it, right? It said insufficient data, human decision required. And John was like, no, we're not going to do that. That'd be dumb.
but in these later episodes, they're, with Black Sun, it's saying not even human decision required. It's just saying like you
This is
are screwed
yeah,
100%.
that would be 100% dumb. So and the existential dread question is I love that you came up with that. um because just looking at life, right? I mean, we want to be thankful for what we have, and we want to enjoy the time that we have here, and we want to be optimistic about the future. um but life ends, right? I mean, to quote William Shatner from, his record Has Been, which is 20 years old at this point. Everybody dies, right? Everybody dies.
Except
Everybody
apparently
ever going to meet
Shatner.
dies. He's going to die.
He
He even
is.
said, by the time you're listening to this, I might be dead, in the song. So it's it's that balance, or that human gymnastics, that mental gymnastics, to stay optimistic and look forward to the future, when it's, at least for you personally and for everybody, in the short term, it's going to end badly. And you have to be prepared for that, while also being proactive about creating a better life and building relationships and propagating the species, and doing all those things that really really are important, um with that knowledge that at its core, life ends, and when it does end, it's tragic.
We're
And
bo-
I don't know how to answer that, but I think the show's trying to ask that question in a lot of ways.
we're both hardcore Trekkies. There are things we would definitely say that franchise does better than this. But I
Mhm.
one thing I would say Space 1999 definitely does better is when they do make those wrong decisions and those failures. Even more than Trek, they're applying some kind of logic to it. It's like let the computer figure it out as far as it can because we don't have the time or energy to go that far, and then human decision required. I mean, people are saying it's cold and clinical, but that's because they're trying to very logically assess the situation and come up with what they think is the best solution, and it's not always right. So, you know,
Yeah,
um,
that's a really, really, really good point. Just the only caveat I would put in there is that if you're going to have somebody put information in, or interact with the computer, it should not be Ted Clifford, because they know nothing about computers.
yeah, yeah, in 1999, he knows nothing about computers. But I do wonder if that's part of, I guess, why Barry Morse, as great actor, does not show up in series two, because as the professor, the main science advisor,
Mhm.
on Moonbase Alpha, being now in a different galaxy, the only thing he can say is "I don't know." I mean, and that's realistic. That's what he, as a scientist, that's what he should be saying. But it makes him, because a lot of Trek is like, I got a hunch. Kirk just gets lucky. That's why he keeps not blowing up. So
Yeah, I mean, he's got great instincts. There's no doubt about that. And a lot of luck involved. But and I think that human intuition, if you will, is sort of the selling point of the show, of that show, in a lot of ways. Is
yeah,
that okay? I've heard the emotional side, I've heard the logical side. Now I've got to take all those things and use those intangible human qualities that only human beings have, and make a decision.
whereas
And
this one seems to be more the left brain, right? Where they don't put
yes,
much emotion into it, which, I mean, that might, again, people complain that might be blunting the dramatic edge of season one. But if you were lost in space, not on the TV show Lost in Space, but in this way, maybe, you want to bear down on the scientific method a little more.
yeah, you definitely would. I wish I could find this review. I've looked for it several times, and I'm starting to wonder if I didn't imagine it. But it came out right after the series premiered, so it was this review was contemporary with the release of the show, and it said it was um like Star Trek. It said it's like Star Trek on methylamine, which I think is some sort of like methamphetamine. But I remember specifically it said methylamine. And I've been trying to find that
The
review
methylamine.
for a while, because Jessica and I were talking about Space 1999. I was trying to introduce the ship some topics on Mission Log the Orville that were similar, and she was not familiar. So I said it's kind of like Star Trek on methylamine, and could not find the review. So if anybody can find it, please point me towards it, because I would love to see that again.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know what that chemical construct is, so maybe that'll help us. I guess I can just research
Well,
what
I
that is
I think
specifically.
I stopped listening at meth, so I kind of at that point I thought, okay, I kind of know what they're getting at.
Yeah, yeah. I guess Star Trek on acid, but Star Trek itself already seems like it's on plenty of that, so
Yeah.
you can't really.
Sometimes I tell people it's like Doctor Who and Star Trek had a baby, but not the good baby, like not the Arnold Schwarzenegger baby. It's more like the Danny DeVito baby.
Dude, hey, but never forget, Danny DeVito is a proper leading film man in the late '80s.
No doubt. He
That
he is
sounds
still,
so
you know what?
weird now.
God love him, and he's still crushing it, like on Always Sunny and stuff like that. And he is involved with so many projects with younger people that as I enter my I don't know, I'm 5.5 decades into this now. And that's, man, I try to work with younger people as often as I can, because I just don't want to end up as one of those guys of a certain age, just screaming at the wind about you know how things aren't the way I think they should be, because my mental model got stuck 3 decades ago. So good for Danny DeVito, man. Maybe it's good that this shows the Danny DeVito baby.
I scream to the wind about the loss of record stores still. I mean, I know we have a few, but uh I actually, I think I've said it before, in Japan I can still pop into a Tower Records, but they've greatly reduced their stock and used that floor space for like 8 K-pop bands. Like it's a whole section for one K-pop group now.
We went to Tower Records in Sacramento. Um and it was just a restaurant. I don't think there was any record store associated with it anymore. They kept the name, and it was one of the first Tower Records locations, but it was not a working record store, which made me sad.
No, the ones in Japan are still functional record stores. Their
Good.
stock is just, and they still have a decent classical stock, but yeah, their rock pop and soul and rap has been greatly shrunk down. So basically, I just step in there for a nostalgia fix till they, I guess, finally close that, because people are just stepping in for a nostalgia fix at this
Mhm.
point, or for the new BTS album. So I guess they still make some money off of that, but something like that. Did you have any other big points you want to throw out on Ring Around the Moon?
No, just, for me, honestly, it felt like a bonus episode. I mean, there are so many that I've seen so many times. And when I started watching this, I was like, I don't remember this guy. Where do you get that briefcase? Why is he typing so fast? Why did Paul just jump over the desk instead of going around the desk? Like, I did not remember anything about this episode. It was like I was watching it for the first time. And I'm glad I revisited it. And it was I think it did have a it had some good effects. It had some very trippy ideas. And at the end it had some good existential questions. So that's kind of where I landed on it. I'm glad I watched it. So if I'm glad I watched something and spent or watched it 3 times and then talked about it for an hour, then I think that's pretty good endorsement for it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I got through most of my notes. I won't go full Norman Lau style, but I will say I put notes for the Alan lyrics for the Alan Parsons project, Eye in the Sky, and Bruce Springsteen's Blinded by the Light in my notes, and made sure to put in the wrong lyric for Blinded by the Light.
I do have one question for you before we go.
Yeah, sure.
Do you not push buttons with the middle finger? Because it's generally your longest finger, or maybe second longest, and it's I push buttons with my middle finger all the time.
Oh, I do Japan. It's not really like a thing so much. So I will read books for very small children pointing to the pictures with my middle finger. And my wife hates this. I'm like, it's Japan, nobody cares. But as a teacher, it's fun because I walked into a class, a high school class, a few weeks ago, and one of the students had his middle finger bandaged up, and I was like, "Oh, how did that happen?" I got to just I held up my middle. Oh, was it? Did you say something bad to someone in it or do this? And they were like, so the class thought that was pretty funny.
So yeah, no, just pushing buttons on the flight deck with your middle finger, and depending on who you're flying with, you might do that with more emphasis than if you're flying with somebody else.
Not people in Japan do not give themselves the finger. If you hear a honk, it's usually a thank you honk.
Oh wow.
Like especially older people. Like coming to my neighborhood, there's a spot where cars can like block where we come in. So
Huh?
I'll usually give a wave if the car is nice enough to leave some space. But yeah, my father on full honk, right? It's
Oh,
not a
I
get
love
it's
that.
not a get out of the way. It's a thank you honk. But
Yeah.
no, as an American though, it always sounds like a honk, right? So
Yeah.
I can't get my head quite past that. Um, well, what's going on in your world, the mission log world?
Well, Mission Log is on a little bit of a hiatus right now with the SAG and the WGA strike. Um,
And I
there
should just
was
throw out really quickly while you're mentioning this. This is a Lord Lou grade production, so I felt okay starting it in the middle of that strike. Just if anyone's wondering.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is not not under
Yeah.
the umbrella of struck work, I'm sure. Um, and so they're filling in their content with some other things. One of the things that's very interesting is that Earl Green and Norman Lau are going to uncover some of the earliest scripts written by Gene Roddenberry and dive into those. Many of these have never been shows never got made, or maybe a pilot got made but never aired. So they're going to look at these things, and that podcast will show up on the Mission Log feed as a show called Genealogy, and really looking forward to that. Not too long ago, Jessica and I just got done covering the graphic novels, or the comic books, written by David Goodman with artwork by David Cabeza, and so we did 6 episodes of that, as well as a supplemental with David Cabeza on Mission Log the Orville. And we're looking forward to hopefully good news on season 4 once we get done with the strikes. And we'll be dropping the audio from the Orville panel in Las Vegas that Jessica and I moderated at some future date, and the Mission Log the Orville feed.
Okay. As for this, it's podcast 1999. I'm not quite sure what the socials are because as we're recording this, you are having the auspicious date of September 11th. It is September 12th in Japan, and this podcast actually premieres tomorrow because it has to premiere on September 13th, doesn't it?
It sure does. So not a lot of time to edit. So I'm glad I botched that recap real good on you.
So, well, I did spring it on you, didn't I? But you could support this and other podcasts we do on Patreon, Podcastius, where we're under no legal, strike stipulations, but we've altered our game a little bit recently. There's Time Enough Podcast, which is usually a Twilight Zone podcast, but we've put the lens onto the public domain Twilight Zone precursor slash contemporary one step beyond, and we're currently having a look at some of those episodes, which is, we're going to get back to the zone, so it's kind of an interesting little study in something similar that pretty much everyone I've brought on for that show so far has been like, well, I've heard of the show but I've never seen it, which is where I started too, so it's kind of an interesting exploration. Films and Filth, where we typically look at the top 100 and bottom 100 films as voted on by IMDb, but we're keeping that unstruck, just in a solidarity display. But for October, that does give us the option to have, go for creepy, weird, non-struck work. So we're looking at one of the luchador Mexican films from the 70s, co-host Luke's choice. I've chosen the Herschel Gordon Lewis film 2000 Maniacs. 10,000 Maniacs did take their name from that movie. They just thought they needed more maniacs.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and a few others. I don't remember what the other creepy ones are off the top of my head, but they're coming. And then there's the
I
video
love the fact that you're doing this public domain stuff. I think that is so much fun, and there's going to be an opportunity to uncover some really, really interesting work.
Yeah, that's kind of like I've got some messages, and I people like, I understand it. I'll look forward, especially the Twilight Zone one. I'll look forward to when you get back to the Twilight Zone, blah blah blah, and I do too. I want to get back to doing like proper zones, but I think I'll have a better perspective to do those zones after maybe watching some of this other show too. So,
heck yeah,
especially like one take is the presenter for that, the Rod Serling type, who's the director, not the writer actually, but he's on screen as oh god, now John Newland, I believe, is his name. It's weird. He's more professional, more spit and polish, better speaking voice than Rod Serling, but he doesn't have that iconic presence at all, right?
Right.
It's kind of like how none of the Beatles were like that proficient at their instruments, but it just works, that sort of vibe. Yeah. Although McCartney's a pretty good bass player, let's give him that. But
yeah, but it's the bass. I mean, it's
slap in the
bass, slap in the bass, man.
Slap in the bass. Well, he plays the pick actually, but actually, I got guitars. I play along with the Beatles, and I do have I just playing along because John Lennon is just, I could barely play the guitar, right? He was a good rhythm player. He did cool stuff.
Yeah.
So you play along, and it's usually simple, but it's
Anyway, I have an appreciation for music to the point that I cannot knock any musician because I have zero ability. So anybody who picks up a guitar, recreationally or professionally, I have the utmost respect for, and I have never looked at somebody and said, that guy just isn't very good. Because I don't know any better, and I know I can't do any better.
I've once or twice been able to say that,
but you're a talented musician.
Won't call out any names.
You're a talented musician. I am not.
Well, anyway, I guess that's up for Ring Around the Moon today. So join us next week for Ring Around Uranus. Not really. No, that was on my mind because that actually was Dayton Ward who just posted to Facebook some Route 66 stop in Minnesota, which was the Uranus Fudge Factory.
Oh my God, they lean into that so much. I see those billboards around Indiana all the time too, and I'm like, come to Uranus, got the best fudge in town. And it's like, all right, well, I guess this marketing strategy works because they're doing it everywhere.
Let me see. I do need to crack out in a few minutes to crack out. That's not the right term. I have a train that I'm catching in 30 minutes. I'm not in a super rush, but yeah.
Need to skirt. Good.
I got
some local audio. I started it like right after you started talking, but It
It's
could help
fine.
if you lose things.
Okay. Yeah, it actually the Disney one, which I actually didn't mention, but it's fine. Yeah, that one it was the first time I gave my co-host for that like permission to record. And
Hmm.
then my computer just went batshit. So it turned out I absolutely needed his recordings. So
Oh
like I
wow.
lo-
Okay, good.
like I didn't even have the last 30 minutes of the podcast. So um that's the weirdest podcast. I have to silo it a little bit. So
Mhm.
my co-host for that one is a conspiracy theory who makes funny comic books. So
That's a cool combo.
so now I technically have a conspiracy theory podcast. But
How many shows do you have right now?
28 of those. But the thing is, it's not like we're sitting there like one, we like Disney. He did
Yeah.
used to work for Disney. So if did you ever go to MGM Studios?
No.
Okay. They used to have this thing where you could actually look down into the Florida
Okay.
animation department, and that was where that was. So
That is cool.
yeah.
Where was that? Was that in LA?
No, in Florida. That
Okay.
was their little Florida
Okay.
continuum or whatever. So
Uh-uh.
but now we're getting we just finished up the Little Mermaid. So now, and we just did DuckTales. So that of course was fun
Ah,
because
DuckTales.
yeah.
You do Tailspin.
Well, they didn't make a movie of that, but yeah, that's what I couldn't
Oh.
remember because we were talking about the late '80s Disney
Hmm.
anime, like Saturday morning animation. I could remember the Rescue Rangers and the gummy. I didn't mention the
Yeah.
gummy bears, but I remembered it. And yeah, Tailspin. I just assumed Baloo was on Chippendale, but no, he was Tailspin. Okay.
Hmm. Yep. The pilot. Earl sent me a thing last night that was really good. It was made in 2003. It was a documentary of the making of space battleship Yamato from, the concept in 73 through to the final Yamato film, which came out in like 83. I think it leaked into 84. They did like a re-release for it. But that was good, man. I watched that last night. It was an hour and 45 long.
I do
Um,
have to tell a quick story about watching that show because I was in
mhm.
Japan, right? It was right after the 311 quake. So
Yeah.
and I was watching that on my laptop, and there were still aftershocks, and the nearby elementary school would play an alarm. And it
Right.
got really confusing because the alarm on the Yamato and the alarm from the elementary school was the same sound. And
Yep.
so,
Yep.
it was like, is that an
Yep.
earthquake or is it a show? I don't know. Is something happening to Yamato or me? So it
That's
was
funny.
really weirdly confusing.
All right.
Um,
I'm sending you this right now.
okay.
Um, Ring Around the Moon, Ring Around. I'm just going to call it RATM. Because
Okay.
they all need abbreviations, right? Like
That's right.
you know, like TWOC and shit like that.
um,
So
I'll send you a message later because I actually, since the strike's not ending, I guess I'm now planning for another month of One Step Beyond. Which, if you want to
okay.
know, they're all on YouTube, mostly in dodgy quality because it's a public access show. There was
Right.
one we watched that looked fantastic. I like was like it was like the first or second one I watched. Like, oh yay, it'll be just like watching a Twilight Zone. But no, it's just that one. But
That's too bad.
Thursday, actually, this is the one John Champion's coming in for. There's one episode that breaks the narrative structure because the show is supposed to be based on real life events, and
Hmm.
this one turns into kind of documentary mode where the presenter goes to Mexico, meets with a shaman, eats mushrooms to see if they give him psychic powers, goes back to California and then does it again, like under more controlled circumstances, and doing like ESP tests and stuff. So
Hmm.
this is 1961,
So fucking cool.
and it's
Um,
before it's basically before the 60s, man. So they like didn't
yeah.
really know the context of what they're talking about.
Right.
Like I don't even think the Carlos Castaneda books had come out yet at that point. So
Yeah. That's awesome. That really is. Yeah, man, we took such a step. I've just been kind of more and more getting an appreciation for the 70s and just how progressive they were, and then just how much of a backslide it took, you know,
cocaine.
after that. Yeah, everybody's like,
Blame.
cocaine, man.
Well, I was
Blame it on
just
the
hearing.
cocaine.
I was just someone saying, coming up with a theory that 80s production is because they're all on cocaine. Because if you're coked up, that drum sounds like the best thing ever, you know. A Yamaha DX7 sounds like the best thing ever when you're coking out. And I mean, you can get some great stuff out of DX7, but I'm talking, like take on it, dun, 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 dun. It's like when you think about it, it's kind of not a great sound with a. I mean, sometimes it's fun, but you compare that to the organic production, and you're like, what the hell are they doing?
That's awesome. Well, I will let you get to your train in plenty of time. And this is always a pleasure, my man.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in, and especially for co-hosting it. No, we just had to do it because we have a couple more podcasts, and then Luke and I get a trip to Okinawa with the company, so that's kind of nice.
That is nice.
But that takes a half week where we can't do podcasts. So, or I guess we could, but we're not going to because we're in Okinawa.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Enjoy that.